The station hung in space like a broken tooth. It orbited a dying star that glowed dull red, casting weak light through the cracked windows. Inside, the air smelled of recycled oxygen and desperation. Mirai sat against a cold metal wall, her two children pressed against her sides. Daehyun was 7 years old. His scales had lost their shine. Jiwoo was only 5, too young to understand why her stomach hurt all the time. "Mama, I'm hungry," Jiwoo whispered. Her voice was so quiet that Mirai almost didn't hear it. Mirai stroked her daughter's head. She had no answer to give. The food rations had stopped coming 3 weeks ago. The supply ships had abandoned this sector after the war moved through. They said the station was too damaged, too dangerous, not worth the fuel costs. The refugees here were forgotten. Around them, other dragon widows sat in similar poses. Hyejin held her infant son, trying to nurse him even though she herself had eaten nothing but water and vitamin paste for days. Somin stared at the ceiling, her eyes empty. Yoonji paced back and forth, her warrior instinct screaming at her to do something, anything. But there was nothing to fight here except slow starvation. The dragon widows were proud once. Their species had been warriors, poets, builders of crystal cities that caught starlight and turned it into song. But the Krathian War had destroyed all of that. The enemy had come with fire and cruelty, burning worlds and taking slaves. Mirai's husband Junho had died defending their home colony. He had held the line long enough for the evacuation ships to escape. Mirai still remembered his last words over the comm. "Take care of our stars." Their stars. He had meant their children. Now those stars were dimming. A sound echoed through the station corridor. Footsteps. Heavy boots on metal floors. The dragon widows looked up, fear flashing in their eyes. Raiders sometimes came to stations like this, looking for easy prey. Mirai pulled her children closer, but the figure that appeared in the doorway was not a raider. He was human. He stood about 6 feet tall, wearing clothes that seemed strange for space. A wide-brimmed hat sat on his head, the kind that people wore in old Earth videos. His jacket was made of worn leather, and his boots had seen many miles. On his hip hung a tool belt instead of weapons. His face was weathered and kind, with eyes that had seen suffering before. "Name's Taemin," he said simply. He looked around the room, taking in the sight of hungry children and exhausted mothers. His jaw tightened. Mirai found her voice. "This section is closed. There's nothing here for traders." Taemin removed his hat, holding it against his chest. "I can see that. I'm not here to trade. I'm here to deliver supplies to the outer colonies. But my nav system glitched, and I stopped here to recalibrate." He paused. "When's the last time you folks ate?" Silence answered him. "We haven't eaten in days," Mirai finally whispered. The words hurt to say. Dragon widows were supposed to be strong, self-sufficient. Asking for help felt like swallowing broken glass. Taemin put his hat back on. "Well, that ain't right." He turned and walked back down the corridor. The dragon widows looked at each other, confused. Was he leaving? Had they offended him? But 5 minutes later, he returned pushing a cargo float loaded with crates. "Got protein bars, dried fruit, water purifiers, and some instant meals," he said, setting down the first crate. "It ain't fancy, but it'll keep you going." Mirai stood up slowly, her legs weak. We cannot pay you." Taemin started opening crates. "Did I ask for payment?" "Our people do not accept charity," Hyejin said from across the room, her voice stiff with pride even as she held her crying infant. Taemin looked at her steadily. "This ain't charity, ma'am. This is what neighbors do. You're hungry? I got food. Simple as that." He pulled out protein bars and started handing them to the children first. Jiwoo took one with trembling hands, looking up at her mother for permission. Mirai nodded. Tears forming in her eyes. The little girl bit into the bar and made a sound of relief so profound that it broke something in Mireille's chest. Daehyun ate slower, more careful, as if afraid the food would disappear if he ate too fast. Around the room, other children began to eat. The mothers watched, unable to stop their own tears. Taemin distributed food to everyone, making sure each person got an equal share. He showed them how to use the water purifiers, how to mix the instant meals. He worked with quiet efficiency, never making anyone feel small or pitied. When everyone had food, Taemin sat down on an empty crate and pulled out his own meal. He ate alongside them, as if sharing food with strangers on a broken station was the most natural thing in the universe. "You came here by accident?" Somin asked. Her voice carried suspicion. Warriors didn't believe in convenient accidents. Taemin chewed and swallowed before answering. "My nav system did glitch, but I've been doing supply runs in this sector for 3 years now. I know which stations got forgotten after the war moved through. Sometimes I glitch my nav on purpose." Understanding dawned on several faces. "You do this often?" Mirai asked quietly. "Often enough." Taemin took another bite. "Galaxy's a big place. Easy for folks to fall through the cracks. My people learned a long time ago that you don't leave folks to starve if you got the means to help." "Why?" The question came from Unji. "We are not human. We are not your responsibility." Taemin looked at her with those weathered eyes. "You got young ones who are hungry. That makes you my responsibility. That makes you everybody's responsibility, far as I'm concerned." He stood up and walked to the viewport. The dying star cast red light across his face. "This station, it's got a hydroponics bay, right? All stations this size do." "It broke during the attack," Hyejin said. "We don't have the parts to fix it." Taemin turned around, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Well now, that's something I can help with. I got a hauler full of salvage and spare parts. What say we take a look at that bay? Get it up and running again?" "You would do this?" Mirai stood up, her children clinging to her legs. "Teach us to repair our own systems?" "Better than just giving you food and leaving," Taemin said. "Give a person a fish, they eat for a day. Teach them to fish, they eat for a lifetime. Old Earth saying, we've got a few days before I need to move on. Let's see what we can fix." Hope, that dangerous and fragile thing, began to kindle in Mirai's chest. Not just hope for survival, but hope for something more. This human, this stranger in a wide-brimmed hat, was offering them dignity. He was offering them a future. "We accept your help," Mirai said formally, placing her hand over her heart in the traditional gesture of her people. "And we offer our labor in return." Taemin touched the brim of his hat. "Fair enough. Let's get to work." As the Dragon Widows finished their first real meal in weeks, and as children laughed for the first time in memory, Mirai looked at the human cowboy and wondered if perhaps the galaxy was not as cruel as she had believed. Perhaps there was still kindness to be found among the stars. Perhaps they would survive after all. The hydroponics bay was worse than Taemin expected. Burn marks scarred the walls where plasma fire had cut through during the attack. Shattered growth tubes littered the floor, and the main water recycler had a hole the size of a fist punched through its core. The solar collectors that should have powered the lights hung dark and dead. "Krathians did this?" Taemin asked, running his hand along a melted control panel. Mirai nodded. She had followed him down with Daehyun. The boy was quiet but curious, his eyes tracking every movement Taemin made. "They destroyed anything that could sustain life. They wanted us to either leave or die." Taemin crouched down and opened his toolkit. "Well, they didn't count on human stubbornness, or Dragon Widow pride." He looked up at Mirai with a small smile. "Between the two, I'd say we can fix just about anything." Over the next 3 days, Taemin became a teacher. He showed Dae-hyun how to strip wires without cutting himself, how to test circuits with a simple meter, how to read the color codes that told you what each wire did. The boy learned fast, his small fingers more nimble than Taemin's in the tight spaces. "You're good at this," Taemin said, as Dae-hyun successfully reconnected a power relay. "Natural engineer." Dae-hyun's scales brightened slightly, a sign of pleasure in his species. "My father was an engineer before he became a soldier." "Was he now?" Taemin handed the boy another tool. "What was his name?" "Junho." The boy's voice was soft. "He died on Crystal Fall." Taemin was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I lost my father too, not to war, to terraforming. Mars, back before they got the atmosphere right. He was part of the first wave, accident with a pressure seal." He continued working as he spoke. "Folks said he died doing important work, making a new world, but all I knew was he was gone." Dae-hyun looked at the human with new understanding. "Does it stop hurting?" "No," Taemin said honestly. "But you learn to carry it different, and you honor them by living good, by being the kind of person they'd be proud of." The boy nodded slowly, processing this. Meanwhile, Jiwoo had found her own teacher. Taemin had brought seeds from Earth, preserved in small packets. Somin, who had been a botanist before the war, stared at them with wonder. "Tomatoes," Taemin explained, pointing to each packet. "Lettuce, carrots, potatoes. They grow fast and don't need much. Perfect for station life." Jiwoo held a seed carefully in her small palm. "This little thing becomes food?" "With dirt, water, light, and time," Taemin confirmed. "That's the miracle of it." Somin's hands shook as she held the packets. "Our crystal gardens use different methods. Energy conversion, not soil growth. I don't know if I can make earth plants work." "Sure you can," Taemin said with confidence. "Plants want to grow. That's what they do. You just give them what they need and get out of their way." He showed her how to prepare the growing beds, mixing the station's recycled waste with mineral supplements to create soil. It wasn't perfect, but it would work. Jiwoo watched everything with intense focus, asking questions that made Taemin laugh. "Why do potatoes grow under the ground?" "That's where they feel safe." "Do plants sleep?" "In their own way, yes." "If I sing to them, will they grow faster?" Taemin paused at that one. "You know, some earth farmers swear by it. Can't hurt to try." So Jiwoo sang, her voice high and sweet, old songs from her mother's world. Somin joined in, then Hyejin. The Dragon Widows had singing traditions that went back thousands of years. The hydroponics bay filled with harmonies that seemed to make even the broken equipment feel less damaged. Yoonji proved to be invaluable with the heavy repairs. Her warrior strength meant she could move the large recycler components that Taemin couldn't budge alone. She didn't talk much, but she watched everything he did with sharp attention. On the second day, as they wrestled a new solar collector into place, she finally spoke. "You are not military." "No, ma'am," Taemin agreed, bolting the collector to its mount. "Just a hauler pilot and rancher." "Yet you fight." Taemin looked at her curiously. "What makes you say that?" "The way you move. The way you check corners before entering a room. The scars on your hands." Yoonji's eyes were knowing. "You have seen combat." Taemin was quiet for a moment. Then he sighed. "Pirates hit our ranch when I was 19. Killed my sister. We fought them off, but—" He shook his head. "Yeah, I've fought. Don't mean I like it. But you would fight again, to protect others." "In a heartbeat." Yoonji nodded slowly. "You are warrior, even if you don't wear the title. There is honor in you." Coming from a Dragon Widow warrior, it was the highest compliment possible. In the evenings, after the work was done, they gathered in the main habitat area. Taemin had brought coffee from Earth, real coffee, and he showed them how to brew it. The dragon widows found the taste bitter but interesting. They told stories around the makeshift fire Taman had rigged from a heating element. Mireille spoke of Junho, her voice growing stronger as she remembered him not just as a loss, but as a person who had lived fully. He had written poetry in the old style, had made her laugh even during the darkest days of the war, had held his children and sung them songs about stars. He believed we would find sanctuary, Mireille said, staring into the fake flames. He believed the galaxy still had good places, good people. He wasn't wrong, Taman said quietly. Hyejin told of her husband, a medic who had stayed behind to treat the wounded during an evacuation. Soman's wife had been a pilot, shot down covering refugee ships. Each story was a thread in the larger tapestry of loss that the war had woven. Then Taman shared his own stories, not just of loss, but of hope. He told them about human history, about how his people had almost destroyed themselves multiple times. Wars, plagues, environmental collapse. But somehow, they had survived. My great-great-grandmother, he said, she was part of the first-generation ships, left Earth when things looked darkest, spent her whole life in transit, never saw the destination. But she kept gardens on that ship, grew vegetables in converted cargo holds. She told my great-grandfather that as long as things could grow, there was hope. And now you carry seeds, Mireille said softly. Now I carry seeds, Taman confirmed. Family tradition. On the third day, they finished the major repairs. When Taman threw the main power switch, everyone held their breath. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with a hum that grew into a steady vibration, the hydroponics bay came to life. Lights flickered, then glowed steady. Water began flowing through the purifier. The solar collectors outside started tracking the dim red star, gathering every photon they could find. The children cheered. Jiwoo ran to the first growing bed where they had planted seeds, as if expecting to see sprouts already. Daehyun stood next to Taman, beaming with pride at what they had accomplished together. It works, Soman whispered, tears streaming down her face. It actually works. Taman wiped sweat from his forehead. Course it works. Never doubted it for a second. That was a lie, and everyone knew it, but it was a kind lie. That evening, Taman prepared to leave. His hauler needed to make its scheduled deliveries. He had already stayed longer than planned. But as he packed his tools, the dragon widows gathered. You have given us more than food, Mireille said formally. You have given us the means to feed ourselves. You have given us knowledge and hope. These are debts we cannot repay. Taman shook his head. No debt. But I will make you a promise. I'll be back in 2 weeks with more supplies, more seeds, and maybe some books on engineering and agriculture, if you want them. We want them, Daehyun said quickly, and everyone laughed. You are always welcome here, Yoonji said. You have earned that right. As Taman walked back to his ship, Mireille followed him. At the docking port, she stopped him with a hand on his arm. Why? She asked. Truly, why do you do this? Taman looked at her, this dragon widow who had lost everything but was still fighting to build something new. Because someone did it for my people once. Long time ago, when humans first left Earth, we were the refugees, starving, desperate, dying in ships that barely worked. An alien species called the Velothians. They gave us supplies, taught us things, gave us a chance. He adjusted his hat. Humanity don't forget things like that. We pay it forward. Always. Mireille's eyes shone with understanding. So we are not charity. We are continuation. Exactly. She placed her hand over her heart. Then we will learn your human ways, and when we are strong again, we will pay it forward too. Taman smiled. I expect nothing less. As his ship pulled away from the station, Mireille stood at the viewport with her children. They watched the hauler's lights disappear into the darkness between stars. But the station behind them was no longer dark. The hydroponics bay glowed with life, and for the first time since the war had destroyed their world, Mireille felt something other than despair. She felt purpose. 2 weeks passed like a dream. The first tomato sprouts pushed through the soil, tiny green promises of food to come. Dae-hyun had taken over maintenance of the electrical systems, checking connections twice daily like Taemin had taught him. Ji-woo sang to the plants every morning, convinced her voice helped them grow. The station felt alive again. Then the raiders came. The warning came from Somin, who had been working on repairing the station's external sensors. She burst into the habitat area, her face pale. Ships, 3 of them, Crethean signatures. The word sent ice through everyone's veins. Cretheans, the same species that had destroyed their worlds, killed their families, left them to die in this broken station. Yoonji was on her feet immediately. How long? 20 minutes until they're in weapons range. Mirai felt her children grab onto her legs. She forced herself to stay calm even though her heart was racing. Why would they come here? There's nothing of value. Slaves, Hyejin said quietly, clutching her infant son. They still trade in slaves. Dragon widows would bring good prices. And children. She couldn't finish the sentence. Yoonji started pulling out weapons from a hidden cache. Plasma rifles, mostly damaged, but a few still functional. We fight. Against 3 warships? Somin's voice cracked. We have maybe 6 working rifles and 10 people who can use them. They'll have dozens of soldiers. Then we die fighting instead of in chains, Yoonji said flatly. Mirai looked around at the faces of the women who had become her family over these weeks. At Hyejin, who was barely recovered from giving birth. At Somin, whose hands were meant for growing things, not holding weapons. At the children, including her own, who had only just learned to smile again. No, Mireille said firmly. We take the children and hide them in the hydroponics bay, the deepest section, behind the water tanks. If they breach the station, the soldiers will search the obvious places first. It might buy time. Time for what? Yoonji demanded. There's no rescue coming. No one knows we're here except... She stopped. They all stopped. Taemin, Ji-woo whispered. He's not due back for 4 more days, Mirai said. But even as she said it, she felt a flutter of hope. Taemin had said he did supply runs in this sector. Maybe, just maybe. We can't count on that, Yoonji said. We prepare to fight. The next 15 minutes were chaos. The mothers rushed the children to the hydroponics bay, settling them behind the large water recycling tanks where the space was cramped and dark. Ji-woo clung to her mother, crying. Mama, don't leave us. Mirai kissed her daughter's forehead. I will come back for you. I promise. Dae-hyun, you're in charge. Keep everyone quiet. Don't come out until you hear my voice or Yoonji's voice, no one else's. Dae-hyun nodded, trying to be brave. He pulled his little sister close. The women returned to defensive positions. Yoonji had distributed the weapons. Mirai held a plasma rifle that felt too heavy in her hands. She had fired weapons before, during the evacuation of her homeworld. But she was no warrior. She was a teacher who had taught younglings about art and history. But she would fight. For her children, she would fight. The station shuddered as the Crethean ships docked. Magnetic clamps engaged with loud clangs that echoed through the metal corridors. Mireille could hear the hiss of airlocks equalizing pressure. Then the sound of boots. Many boots. They came through the main corridor in formation. Crethean soldiers, their armor black and red, their faces hidden behind helmets. They moved with the confidence of predators who knew their prey was helpless. The lead soldier stopped when he saw the dragon widows standing in defensive positions, weapons raised. He laughed, the sound distorted through his helmet speakers. Look at this, he called to his companions. The forgotten ones think they can fight. More laughter echoed. There were at least 20 soldiers, maybe more, behind them. The Dragon Widows numbered 8 with weapons. "Leave this station," Yunji commanded, her voice steady despite the odds. "There is nothing for you here." The lead soldier tilted his head. "Oh, but there is. Dragon Widows fetch excellent prices on the slave markets, and I see you've been growing food. How industrious. We'll take that too." "You'll take nothing." Yunji fired first. The plasma bolt struck the lead soldier's shield, which absorbed the impact with a blue flash. Then everything exploded into chaos. The Creathians returned fire, and the Dragon Widows dove for cover behind overturned furniture and support pillars. Mirai fired her rifle, the recoil slamming into her shoulder. She saw her shot go wide, hitting the wall instead of the soldiers. Around her, plasma fire filled the air with burning light. Hyejin cried out as a bolt grazed her arm. Soman dragged her behind better cover. They were losing. Mirai could see it clearly. The Creathians had better weapons, better armor, better training. They advanced methodically, forcing the Dragon Widows back step by step. 2 of the women were already injured. How long could they hold? Then, impossibly, a new sound cut through the battle, a ship's engine, not Creathian. The pitch was different, the rhythm unfamiliar to the attackers. The station shuddered again as something docked at the secondary port. The Creathian lead soldier barked orders, splitting his forces, half turned to face the new threat. Mirai heard voices in the corridor, human voices. "Watch that corner, Jinho." "Got it, boss." "Mina, bring up the rear. Don't let them flank us." Then Taman appeared, and he wasn't alone. A dozen humans poured into the corridor behind him, all wearing similar practical clothes, all carrying weapons that looked improvised but deadly. Taman had a plasma rifle in his hands and that wide-brimmed hat still on his head. "Sorry we're late," he called to Mirai. "Had a feeling you might need company." The Creathians opened fire on the humans, but the humans moved like water, fluid and unpredictable. They didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like people who had learned to survive on hostile frontiers where every fight was life or death. A young human woman, barely 20, slid under a plasma bolt and came up firing. Her shot took down a Creathian soldier's shield. An older man with gray hair threw something that looked like a mining charge. It exploded with a concussive blast that knocked 3 soldiers off their feet. Taman moved through the chaos with eerie calm, his shots precise and measured. He fought his way to Mirai's position and dropped down beside her. "You okay?" "How did you know?" Mirai gasped, her ears ringing from the explosions. "Picked up their ship signatures 2 hours ago. Called in some favors." He fired 3 quick shots, forcing the Creathians to fall back. "Ranchers and traders from across the sector. Some of us served together in the frontier wars. We don't leave our own to fight alone." "We're not your own," Mirai said, even as relief flooded through her. Taman glanced at her, his eyes hard. "You are now. You ate at my table, you worked beside me. That makes you family, and humans defend their family." The battle turned. The Creathians had expected easy prey, not organized resistance from humans who fought with desperate cleverness. A female human named Mina disabled their communication array with some kind of electromagnetic pulse device. Jinho, the young man Taman had called to, used a grappling hook to pull a Creathian soldier's weapon right out of his hands. The Creathians began to retreat, but Taman had other plans. He moved quickly through the combat, directing the other humans with hand signals. They herded the raiders away from their ships, cutting off their escape routes. Soon, the Creathians found themselves trapped in the central hub of the station. The lead soldier removed his helmet, revealing a scarred face with burning eyes. This was Vexthar, a name whispered in fear across the sector, a commander who had personally overseen the destruction of 3 colonies. "You interfere with Creathian business, human," Vexthar snarled. Taman approached him calmly, his rifle pointed at the floor but ready. "No, I'm protecting my neighbors. There's a difference. These dragon widows are defeated. They are spoils of war. The war moved on. They're just trying to survive, same as anyone. Vexthar laughed. You primitives and your sentiment. You think the galaxy cares about your petty morals? The strong take what they want. That is the law of space. Taman was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, and his voice carried through the entire hub. You know what I think? I think you're a bully who picks on the weak because you can't face anyone your own size. I think you came here expecting frightened refugees who couldn't fight back. But you know what you found instead? He gestured around the room at the dragon widows standing tall despite their injuries, at the humans ready to fight again if needed. You found people who won't roll over. You found communities that look out for each other. And you found humans who really, really don't like bullies. Big words from a primitive, Vexthar spat. Maybe, Taman agreed. But here's the thing about us primitives. We're real good at improvising. He pulled a device from his pocket and pressed a button. Somewhere on the Krethian ships, the mining charges his people had planted during the battle detonated. Not enough to destroy the ships, but enough to disable their weapons and engines. Vexthar's eyes widened in shock and rage. Now, Taman said conversationally, you and your boys are going to walk back to your ships. You're going to sit there until the station's distress beacon brings proper authorities. And you're going to think real hard about whether attacking refugee stations is worth this much trouble. You dare? I dare. Taman's voice went cold. And if you ever come back here, if you ever threaten these people again, you won't just fight dragon widows and a handful of ranchers. You'll fight every human in this sector. And I promise you, we're a lot more trouble than we look. The other humans raised their weapons in silent agreement. The Krethians, their escape cut off and their commander captured, had no choice. Slowly, they filed back to their disabled ships. When the last Krethian had left, the station fell silent, except for the sound of people breathing hard. Then Jiwoo's voice called from the hydroponics bay. Mama, can we come out now? Mirei's rifle clattered to the floor as she ran. The children poured out from hiding and mothers grabbed them close. Jiwoo clung to Mirei, crying with relief. Dae-hyun stood beside them, his young face looking older than it should. Taman watched the reunion, a small smile on his tired face. The other humans began checking the injured, sharing medical supplies, making sure everyone was okay. Mina approached Mirei, offering a bandage for a cut on her head that Mirei hadn't even noticed. You did good, the young woman said, holding them off until we got here. We would have lost, Mirei said honestly. Maybe, but you didn't give up. That's what matters. As the adrenaline faded, Mirei looked at Taman. He was checking his rifle, making sure it was safe before setting it aside. Always careful. Always thinking of others. You came back early, she said. He shrugged. Had a bad feeling? Sometimes you learn to trust those. He looked at her seriously. You folks did real good, took real courage to stand against those odds. We had no choice. There's always a choice. You chose to fight instead of surrender. You chose to protect your children instead of yourselves. That takes strength. Around them, humans and dragon widows worked together to secure the station, tend wounds, and comfort frightened children. Two species that had barely known each other 2 weeks ago, now standing as allies. The galaxy, Mirei thought, was full of cruelty. But it was also full of this. People who showed up when they were needed, who fought for strangers, who refused to let darkness win. Taman had given them more than provisions or repairs. He had given them proof that they weren't alone in the universe, and that gift was worth more than all the food and tools in the galaxy. The humans stayed for 3 days, while the authorities came to collect the captured raiders. Proper authorities, not the corrupt officials who had abandoned the station in the first place. Taman had called in more favors, reaching out to a coalition officer he trusted. The officer had been horrified to learn about the forgotten refugee station and promised a full investigation. During those 3 days, Mireille learned more about humans than she had thought possible. They were loud, chaotic, and seemed to function on organized confusion rather than any sensible plan. Yet somehow, things got done. Jinho, the young man with quick reflexes, spent hours playing games with the children. He taught them Earth card games and told them stories about growing up on a mining colony where every day was a gamble against cave-ins and equipment failures. The children loved him. Mina helped Hae-jin set up a proper medical station. She had training as a combat medic from her time in the Frontier Defense Forces. Together, they treated injuries and organized the limited medical supplies more efficiently. An older human named Daiho, who ran a trading post 3 systems away, worked with Somin to expand the hydroponics bay. He brought seeds from his own gardens and taught her techniques for maximizing growth in limited space. But it was a conversation on the second evening that changed everything for Mirai. She found Taemin sitting alone in the observation dome, looking out at the dying star. She sat beside him quietly. "Your people," she said after a while. "They came immediately when you called. No questions asked." Taemin nodded. "That's how it works in the frontier. You look out for each other because no one else will." "But why us? We're strangers, aliens. We have no connection to humanity." Taemin was quiet for a long moment. Then he began to speak, his voice soft, but carrying weight. "About 300 years ago, humans left Earth in generation ships. We'd almost killed ourselves with wars and pollution. The planet was dying. So we built these massive ships and just left. Hoped we'd find something better among the stars." He turned to look at her. "It was bad, Mireille. Real bad. Ships breaking down. People dying of diseases we couldn't cure. Food running out. Radiation leaks. Those generation ships were coffins that just took a long time to kill you." Mireille listened, seeing pain in his eyes that was old but not forgotten. "My great-great-grandmother was on the ship called Persistence. Stupid name for a ship where people were losing hope every day. They were down to starvation rations. The hydroponics had failed. Children were dying." His voice caught slightly. "They sent out distress signals, but no one was close enough to help. They thought they were going to drift through space until everyone died." "But you're here," Mirai said softly. "So someone came." "The Velothians," Taemin confirmed. "Aliens we'd never even heard of. They picked up the distress signal and diverted their entire trade fleet to help. Brought food, medicine, spare parts. But more than that, they taught us. Showed us how to maintain our systems better. Shared their knowledge freely. They stayed for 2 months, helping 7 different human ships that were in trouble." "Did they ask for payment?" "That's what my great-great-grandmother asked. She said the Velothian captain just looked at her with these big silver eyes and said, 'You are far from home and in need. That is payment enough for us.'" Taemin smiled at the memory that had been passed down through generations. "The Persistence made it to a habitable world. So did the other ships. Humans survived, and we made a promise. To help others," Mireille finished. "To never let anyone drift alone in the dark," Taemin corrected. "To pay forward what was given to us. It's not charity, Mireille. It's duty. It's recognition that we were where you are now. Desperate, forgotten, sure we were going to die, and someone cared enough to save us anyway." Tears formed in Mireille's eyes. "What happened to the Velothians?" Taemin's face fell. "Plague. About 80 years ago. Wiped out 90% of their species before anyone could find a cure. Humans sent every ship we had to help, but it wasn't enough. They're gone now. Just a few thousand left, scattered across protected colonies." "I'm sorry." "So are we. Every human knows the story. Every human child learns it in school. The Velothians saved humanity, and we couldn't save them back." He looked at her intently. "But we can honor them, by being what they were, by helping others the way they helped us. It's the best memorial we can give them." Understanding washed over Mirai like a wave. This wasn't about humans being heroic or noble. It was about gratitude that had become culture. It was about a debt so profound that it had shaped an entire species' values. "So when you see refugees," Mirai said slowly, "you see your own ancestors. Every time." Taman stood up, offering her his hand to help her rise. "And when I see dragon widows standing up to raiders even though they're outgunned and scared, I see people worth fighting for, worth saving, because maybe one day you'll do the same for someone else. Maybe you'll be the ones who show up when others have given up hope." "We will," Mirai said firmly. "I promise you, we will." They walked back to the main habitat together. As they entered, they found a gathering. The dragon widows and humans had pulled together tables and chairs, creating one large circle. Food was spread out, a mixture of earth rations and the first vegetables from the hydroponics bay. The tomatoes had ripened fast, probably because of Jiwoo's constant singing. "Sit, sit," Daeho called out, waving them over. "We're sharing stories. Yoonji was just telling us about the Battle of Crystal Falls." Yoonji, who usually spoke little, was in the middle of a tale about her husband's final stand. The humans listened with rapt attention, occasionally asking respectful questions. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Then Jinho raised a cup. "To warriors who stand for others. May we honor their memory by being worthy of their sacrifice." Everyone raised their cups and drank. It was just water with a bit of fruit juice, but it felt sacred. The evening continued with more stories. Hyejin told about her husband, the medic, how he had believed that healing was the highest form of combat. Mina shared a story about her grandmother, who had been part of the first Mars terraforming teams and had died to save her crew from a reactor meltdown. Daehyun, emboldened by the atmosphere, stood up. His voice was shaky but determined. "My father wrote poetry. He said every star was a word in the galaxy's song. He died so his words could keep being heard through me and Jiwoo." The boy recited one of his father's poems, speaking in the melodic dragon widow language. Even though the humans couldn't understand the words, they felt the emotion. Several had tears in their eyes. When Daehyun finished, Taman stood. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he walked to where his pack rested against the wall and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He returned to the circle and carefully unwrapped it. It was a book, old, worn, with pages that had been turned thousands of times. The cover was faded but still readable. Songs of persistence, poems from the generation ships. "This belonged to my great-great-grandmother," Taman said quietly. "She wrote poems during the voyage, about hope, about stars, about believing tomorrow could be better than today." He held the book out to Daehyun. "I think your father and my ancestor would have understood each other. This is yours now. Maybe you'll add your own words to it someday." Daehyun took the book with shaking hands, his eyes wide. "I can't. This is your family's—" "And now your family," Taman said simply. "Family shares what matters most." Mirai felt something break open in her chest, not breaking from pain, but breaking from too much emotion held too long. She started to cry, and then Hyejin was crying, and then Soman. Even Yoonji's eyes glistened with unshed tears. The humans, understanding that this was important, simply sat with them, didn't try to fix it or stop it, just let the grief and gratitude pour out. Later, as the gathering quieted and children fell asleep on their mothers' laps, Mirai asked the question that had been building in her mind. "What do you want from us, Taman? Truly?" He looked surprised. "I told you nothing." "No." There must be something. Humans don't just give without expecting. Humans expect exactly one thing, Deho interrupted gently. That when you're strong again, when you've rebuilt, when someone else is drifting alone in the dark, he smiled. You show up for them. Like we showed up for you. Like the Velothians showed up for us. That's all? That's everything, Taman said. That's how civilizations survive. That's how we build something better than endless war and cruelty, one act of kindness at a time, one station saved, one child fed, one community rebuilt. Mina leaned forward, her young face serious. The galaxy's big and mostly cold. Lots of species out there think strength means taking what you want, crushing anyone weaker. But humans learned different. We learned that real strength is standing together. That the strongest thing you can do is help someone who can't pay you back. So we're not charity, Mirai said, echoing the words from weeks ago. We're part of a chain, a long chain of people helping people. Exactly, Taman confirmed. And someday, maybe decades from now, maybe centuries, some other desperate souls will send out a distress signal. And maybe it'll be dragon widows who show up. And you'll tell them the story of how humans helped you. And they'll promise to pass it forward too. Yunji spoke up, her warrior's voice thoughtful. This is strategy, long-term strategy. You're building alliances across the galaxy, not through force or trade agreements, but through debts of honor. It's not that calculated, Jinho said with a laugh. We just don't like seeing kids go hungry. It can be both, Yunji countered. Good strategy and good hearts aren't exclusive. She looked at Taman with new respect. Your species is more cunning than they appear. You fight wars with kindness. You build empires of gratitude. This is warrior wisdom of the highest level. Taman looked uncomfortable with the praise. We're just doing what's right. That, Yunji said firmly, is what makes it powerful. The next morning, the coalition ship arrived to collect the prisoners. The officer in charge, a stern woman named Commander Yuna, was appalled by what she found. She immediately ordered relief supplies for the station and logged formal complaints against the officials who had abandoned it. This should never have happened, she told Mirai. The coalition has procedures for refugee support. Someone failed you badly. I promise there will be consequences. What matters is what happens next, Mirai said. Can you ensure supplies continue to come? You have my word, and I'll be stationing a patrol in this sector. No more raiders. As the humans prepared to leave, the dragon widows gathered to say goodbye. The children clung to Jinho, begging him to stay. He knelt down to their level. I got to get back to my family's mine, he said gently. But I'll visit, promise. And you can call me any time on the comm. I'll teach you more Earth games. Mina hugged Hyejin, who had become close to her over the days of working together. You're a natural healer. Keep studying. Maybe one day we'll work together officially. Deho gave Sumin a data pad. Everything I know about frontier agriculture is on here. You'll probably figure out stuff I never thought of. When you do, send me notes. We'll both get smarter. Finally, Taman stood before Mirai. They looked at each other for a long moment. I don't know how to thank you, Mirai said. Don't thank me. Just live, rebuild, and someday help someone else. We will. I swear it on my husband's memory. Taman touched the brim of his hat in salute. Then he surprised her by pulling her into a hug. You're stronger than you know, Mirai. Your children are lucky to have you. When he pulled back, Dae-hyun stepped forward. He held out his hand the way Taman had taught him, a human handshake. I'm going to be an engineer, like you. Taman shook his hand solemnly. You already are, kid, you already are. As the human ships departed, Mirai stood at the viewport with her children and watched them go. The station felt different now. Not just repaired, but transformed. They had food, working systems, and most importantly, they had hope. Mama, Jiwoo asked. Are the humans angels? Mirai smiled, remembering the conversation about the Velothians. No, little star. They're just people who remember what it's like to need help, and that makes them something better than angels. It makes them friends. 6 months changed everything. The station that had been a broken tomb for forgotten refugees now glowed with life. The hydroponics bay had expanded to fill 3 entire sections, growing food not just for the residents, but for trade with passing ships. The green growing things attracted attention. Life always did, especially in the cold darkness of space. Mirai stood in the main habitat area, which had been transformed into something between a marketplace and a community center. Dragon Widow children played with younglings from 4 other refugee species that had heard about the station and come seeking shelter. The coalition had officially designated it as a relief center, bringing regular supplies and protection, but it wasn't charity keeping them alive anymore. It was work, trade, and community. "Mama, look!" Jiwoo called from the hydroponics bay entrance. She was covered in soil, grinning widely. At 10 years old now, she had become the station's best botanist. The vegetables she grew were famous across the sector for their flavor and nutrition. "What is it, little star?" "The Earth strawberries are ready. First harvest. Can we save some for Taman when he visits?" Mirai smiled. "Of course. He'll be here tomorrow." Tomorrow. Taman's visits had become regular events over the past 6 months. He came every 2 weeks, sometimes with other humans, sometimes alone. He brought supplies still, but more often he brought news, messages from other stations, and occasionally refugees who needed a safe place to land. Daehyun emerged from the engineering section, now 12 years old and already taller than his mother. Grease marked his face, and his hands were permanently stained from working with circuits and wiring. He wore a tool belt exactly like Taman's. "Mom, I finished the new comm array. We can reach 2 more sectors now." Pride filled his voice. "And I added an encryption that Jinho taught me. The raiders won't be able to track our signals." "Well done," Mirai said, pulling him into a quick hug before he could squirm away. "Your father would be proud." "I know," Daehyun said simply. It wasn't arrogance, just truth. He had found his path, and it was good. Hyejin approached with her son Minho, now 6 months old and healthy. The infant grabbed at everything with chubby fingers, curious about the world. "Mirai, we have new arrivals. A family. They're Telvanni. 3 adults, 4 children. Their ship broke down near the sector boundary. Coalition patrol brought them here. Do they have skills? Trades? The mother is a teacher. The father knows metallurgy. The uncle is a pilot." Mirai nodded. "Good. We need all of those. Get them settled. Make sure the children get food and medical checks. Then I'll talk with the adults about how they can contribute." This had become the pattern. Refugees arrived broken and desperate. The station gave them food, shelter, and medical care. But then came the important part, finding how they could contribute to the community. Everyone had skills, knowledge, or strength to offer. The key was helping them remember that they were more than just victims. Yoonji ran combat training in the mornings now, not just for Dragon Widows, but for anyone who wanted to learn. Her students included a Telvanni teenager, a human trader who stayed on the station between runs, and even Soman, who had decided that being a botanist didn't mean being helpless. "We will never be caught defenseless again," Yoonji had declared after the raider attack. She trained her students hard, but she also taught them about honor, about fighting only to protect, never to conquer. That evening, Mirai sat in her small quarters reviewing the station's status reports on a data pad. They were doing well, better than well. The hydroponics produced surplus food that they traded for other supplies. Daehyun's repairs kept the station running better than it ever had. They had established trade relationships with 6 different species. But something was missing. Mirai had felt it growing for weeks now. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." It was Soman and Hyejin. They looked concerned. "What's wrong?" Mirai asked immediately. "Nothing's wrong," Soman said. "That's the problem. Everything is good. We're safe, fed, protected. The children are happy." "And?" Mirai prompted, sensing there was more. Hyejin spoke up. "We feel like we're just surviving, living day to day. It's good, but—" She struggled for words. "We're warriors, builders. Our species created crystal cities that sang with starlight. And now we're just managing a station?" Mirai understood immediately. She had felt the same restlessness. "You want purpose beyond survival?" "Yes," Soman confirmed. "And we've been thinking, remembering what Taman told you, about the Velothians, about paying it forward. What are you suggesting?" The two women looked at each other, then back at Mirai. "There are other stations like this one, other forgotten places where refugees are suffering. What if we started helping them, the way the humans helped us?" The idea took root in Mirai's mind immediately. "We don't have the resources the humans have, no ships, limited supplies." "But we have knowledge now," Hyejin argued. "We know how to repair hydroponics, how to maintain stations, how to grow food in impossible conditions. We could teach others. We could save them from suffering what we suffered," Soman added. Mirai stood up, her heart beating faster. "We would need a ship, supplies, permission from the coalition. Or," Yunji's voice came from the doorway, where she had been listening, "we could just do it, the human way. Ask for forgiveness instead of permission." They spent the night planning. By morning, they had a rough idea. They would reach out to Taman and the other humans, ask for help getting a ship and initial supplies. Then they would start small, visiting nearby stations, offering knowledge and labor. They would grow from there. When Taman arrived the next day, they presented the plan to him. He listened carefully, his weathered face thoughtful. When they finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You understand this won't be easy?" he finally said. "Some folks won't trust you. Some species don't like dragon widows because of old conflicts. You'll face dangers, setbacks, probably some outright failures." "We know," Mirai said firmly. "But we have to try. You showed us what it means to help others. Now we need to do the same." A slow smile spread across Taman's face. "Well, all right then. Let's get you a ship." "Just like that?" Soman asked, surprised. "Just like that. There's a cargo hauler at Daeho's trading post. Owner died without family. It's space-worthy but needs work. I'll talk to him about transferring ownership. You'll need to fix it up, but I'm guessing Daehyun can handle that." "I can," Daehyun called from where he was pretending not to eavesdrop. "And supplies?" Hyejin asked. "We'll take up a collection. The human traders in this sector, we look out for each other. We'll look out for you too." Taman leaned back. "But here's the thing. You can't just copy what we do. You need to do it your way, the Dragon Widow way. What makes your people special?" Mirai thought about it. "Our people were warriors and artists. We valued both strength and beauty. We believed that protecting something meant making it worth protecting." "There you go," Taman said. "So when you help other stations, don't just repair their systems. Help them remember what makes their lives worth living. Teach them to create beauty alongside function. That's your gift." Over the next 2 months, the plan took shape. The cargo hauler, which they named New Beginning, arrived at the station. Daehyun led a team in repairing it, using techniques Taman had taught him and innovations he figured out himself. The boy was becoming a true engineer, combining Dragon Widow crystalline technology with human practicality. Ji-Woo created seed libraries, organizing different Earth and Dragon Widow plants by climate and growth requirements. She wrote simple instructions for each type, making sure even someone with no experience could understand. Yunji trained a defense team, not to conquer, but to protect. She taught them that violence was sometimes necessary but never first choice. Hyjin assembled medical kits and created basic healthcare guides. She combined human medicine with Dragon Widow healing techniques, creating something new and effective. And Mirai learned diplomacy. She studied the different species in the galaxy, their cultures and customs. She learned how to approach people with respect, how to offer help without causing offense. The day came when they were ready to leave. The station gathered to see them off. Their crew consisted of 5 Dragon Widows, Mirai, Yunji, Somin, Hyejin, and a younger widow named Bora, who had proven herself skilled at negotiation. The children would stay on the station, cared for by the community. It hurt to leave Daehyun and Jiwoo, but both children understood. "We'll be okay, Mom," Daehyun said, trying to sound adult. "I'll keep the station running, and Jiwoo will keep everyone fed." "I'll sing extra loud," Jiwoo promised, hugging her mother tight. "So the plants remember you and grow strong." Taemin stood at the docking port, along with Jinho, Mina, and Daeho. The humans had come to see them off. "Remember," Taemin said, "you're not alone out there. Any trouble you call. We'll come." "We know," Mirai said. Then she surprised herself by hugging the human cowboy. "Thank you for everything, for teaching us that survival isn't enough, that we can be more than victims." Taemin returned the hug. "You taught me something too, that humanity's best tradition finds good soil in any species. You're going to do great things." The new beginning undocked smoothly, Bora at the helm. As the station grew smaller in the viewport, Mirai felt both sadness and excitement. They were leaving safety, venturing back into uncertainty. But this time, they weren't fleeing. They were choosing to go. They were choosing to help. Their first destination was a small station 4 days away. Coalition reports said it housed Telvanni refugees who were struggling with food shortages. The station's hydroponics had failed, and no one knew how to fix it. "We do," Somin said confidently as they jumped to hyperspace. "We know exactly how to fix it." Over the next 3 months, the crew of the New Beginning visited 7 stations. At each one, they offered help freely. They repaired systems, taught agricultural techniques, shared medical knowledge. They stayed long enough to ensure people could maintain what they built, but not so long that the refugees became dependent. They faced challenges. At one station, the locals were suspicious of Dragon Widows because of old territorial conflicts. Mirai spent 3 days just talking with them, listening to their grievances, acknowledging past wrongs. Eventually, they accepted help. At another station, raiders attacked while they were in the middle of repairs. Yunji and her training proved valuable. They fought off the attack using defensive tactics that minimized casualties on both sides, but mostly, they found gratitude. They found people desperate for help, for hope, for the knowledge that someone cared. And each time they left a station, they told the same story Taemin had told them. 300 years ago, humans were dying in generation ships. Aliens called Velothians saved them. Humans never forgot. When we were starving on our station, humans saved us. Now we pass it forward. Someday, when you're strong again, help someone else. That's all we ask. The pattern spread. Some of the stations they helped started helping others. A network began forming, unplanned and organic. Refugees helping refugees, species teaching species. All connected by the simple idea that kindness should flow outward, not stop at one's own borders. News of the New Beginning reached Coalition headquarters. An official investigation was launched, not to stop them, but to document what was happening. The investigator, a by-the-book bureaucrat, arrived at one of the stations expecting to find some kind of scam. Instead, he found a Telvanni mother teaching a group of refugees how to grow earth vegetables while singing Dragon Widow songs to the plants. He found a former soldier teaching peaceful defensive tactics. He found children of 5 different species playing together, sharing food from a communal garden. He filed a report recommending that the coalition officially support these efforts. The recommendation was approved. 6 months after leaving their home station, the crew of the New Beginning returned for the first time. They brought with them 3 refugees who wanted to see the place everyone talked about, the station that had been broken and was now alive. Dae-hyun had grown another inch. He showed his mother the new improvements he had made, including a better recycling system he had designed himself. Jiwoo's gardens had expanded even further. She had created a meditation space where people could sit among growing things and find peace. That evening, there was a gathering. Not just the station residents, but people from the ships currently docked. Traders, travelers, refugees finding their way. The room was crowded and loud with conversation in a dozen different languages. Taemin had returned too, along with several other humans. They sat among dragon widows, Telvanni, Krell, humans, and species Mirai still couldn't name, all of them eating together, sharing stories. Mirai stood to address the crowd. Conversations quieted. 6 months ago, she began, this station was a place where people came to die slowly. We had given up hope. We thought the galaxy had forgotten us. She paused. Then a human in a ridiculous hat showed up. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Taemin touched the brim of his hat with a grin. He brought food, yes, but more importantly, he brought something we had lost. He brought dignity, the chance to help ourselves, the knowledge that we weren't alone. Mirai's voice grew stronger. He told us about the Velothians, about how kindness can echo across centuries, and he asked us to pass it forward. She gestured to her crew. So we did. We're still doing it. And everywhere we go, we find the same thing. People want to help each other. They just need someone to show them it's possible, to show them that they have value even when they're at their lowest. Mirai looked directly at Taemin. You gave us more than provisions. You gave us purpose. You showed us that the worst thing that can happen isn't death or loss or suffering. The worst thing is isolation, the belief that no one cares. She raised her cup. To the Velothians, who saved humanity. To the humans who saved us. And to every person in this room who chooses to help instead of ignore. To every person who shows up when others have given up. To everyone who pays it forward. To paying it forward, the crowd echoed, raising their cups. Later, as the celebration continued, Taemin found Mirai on the observation deck. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. You've done something remarkable, Taemin said finally. 7 stations in 6 months. That's more than I manage in a year. We learned from the best, Mirai replied. Then, quieter. Do you think the Velothians would be proud of what humanity started, of what we're continuing? Taemin considered the question seriously. I think they'd be amazed. They saved one species, but that one act of kindness has rippled out to touch dozens of others, maybe hundreds eventually, maybe thousands. He smiled. Yeah, I think they'd be proud. I think they'd say their sacrifice meant something. It did, Mirai said firmly. It changed the galaxy. One ship at a time, one station at a time, one hungry child at a time. They stood together as the station hummed with life around them. Inside, people laughed and talked and planned. Children played without fear. Gardens grew. Families rebuilt. And somewhere in the darkness of space, other refugees sent out distress signals, not knowing that help would come, that someone would show up, that someone cared, because that was what they did now. Dragon widows and humans and Telvanni and all the others who had learned the lesson. They paid it forward. They showed up. They refused to let anyone drift alone in the dark. And the galaxy, one small act of kindness at a time, became a little less cruel and a little more home. The dying star cast its red light through the viewport, and for the first time in her life, Mireille thought it looked beautiful, not because of what it was, but because of what grew in its light: life, community, hope. Her husband Junho had been right. The galaxy did have good places, good people. You just had to find them, or become them. "Thank you," Mireille said to Taemin, "for everything." "No need for thanks," Taemin replied, touching his hat brim. "Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep showing up. That's all the thanks anyone needs." As they returned to the celebration, Mireille knew that this was just the beginning. The new beginning would fly again. They would find more stations, more refugees, more people who needed to know they weren't alone. They would teach and help and build. They would honor the memory of the Velothians by being what humanity had become, people who refused to let others suffer alone. And someday, maybe centuries from now, someone would tell the story of how humans saved dragon widows, and how dragon widows passed it forward, and how that simple act of showing up created ripples that spread across the galaxy. The story would become legend, the legend would become culture, and the culture would remind everyone that the strongest thing in the universe wasn't weapons or technology or power. It was showing up for someone who needed help, even when there was nothing to gain except the knowledge that you did the right thing. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. And now it was everyone's gift to each other.